Alright, so we're back in a world of no rest for the wicked, and in today's video guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about my concerns for the upcoming Into the Breach update that's going to be launching on April the 30th. That's less than 24 hours from now, and there has been a handful of videos and information that's come out that has shown us some of the changes coming with no rest for the wicked, and some of these changes have me a little bit concerned because this is some of the things I actually talked about a year ago back when I made quite a bit of content for No Rest for the Wicked when it initially launched into early access. I kind of want to share my thoughts a little bit on this so that players are a little bit more aware of things, or maybe even the team can have some form of feedback in my thoughts on things and changes coming to No Rest for the Wicked Into the Breach. Now, I want to be very clear, I have not seen the entire patch notes. We're going to see them day of launch, and some of these concerns may not be the case. But keep in mind that looking at some of the previews that we've seen recently, we showed a lot of this stuff still being existent in the game. I kind of want to touch base on that, so just prefacing by saying, yeah, I haven't necessarily played it, but some of the things that we visually see actually still are in the game, so that's where my concerns come in. With that brief explanation out of the way, let's talk about some of the problems that I am going to foresee the game have in the next coming days, and yeah, there's like 3 major pillar points. So the first is Affix Bloat. So in No Rest for the Wicked, you have the ability to get different types of pieces of gear, and they can roll a combination of different affixes. For the best gear, not including Masterwork, I'm not sure what Masterwork brings to the table. This is going to be a new set of like a rarity. There are 5 affixes on a piece of gear, 4 positive and 1 negative. Now there's 2 problems with the system, and the update is actually going to be compounding. First off, Affix Bloat, meaning there's going to be a lot of affixes on it, meaning that you're going to be farming for pieces of gear to get your perfect build. In previous like patches, and not in this upcoming patch, you couldn't really modify gear in any way, shape, or form. You kind of was forced to use the current setup that it comes with and just play around it and hope it doesn't get the affixes that are bad or not what you want for your build, because it made the piece just worthless. In the upcoming update, there will be changes to where you can use your Fallen Embers to essentially re-roll the stats on these affixes. Now, while this isn't the biggest concern in the world, my concern comes with the fact that the affixes are quite a few of them and is very bloaty, and the last time I played, embers weren't necessarily the most easiest things to obtain, and it actually ended up making farming really tough, especially considering nowadays there were going to be significantly more affixes on the gear, and I'm not sure how embers are going to be handled. Hopefully there's more, maybe there's less, who knows. The amount of additional affixes is going to make the grind really tough, in my opinion. And for someone like me who probably has like an insane amount of time to actively just farm and play the game, I can probably get through with it because I can just keep playing. But I don't know how the more casual player is going to be able to react to this, because again, the last time I played, the embers were relatively difficult to get, and seeing that the RNG on the affixes are going to be relatively tough, my biggest concern is going to be that players are going to be spending so much time trying to get good rolls on their gear that it may discourage them from playing. Again, I haven't played it in practice, so who knows, it may be actually viable for the average, more casual player, but again, this is a major concern. Now, the other negative with this system is that it has 5 affixes, and one of them, as you can tell, is actually red, and this is a negative affix that every piece of gear will always have. Now, the problem that I had with this system a year ago was the fact that they were disproportionate in how bad or good they are. If you look at my current character right now, you'll notice a very similar theme of what type of negative affixes I take. I always take the half durability because repairing armor is way easier than some of the other ones. To give you an example of one that is just straight up not usable and has never been usable is whenever you take damage, you will lose some stamina. There's one that makes you take damage makes you lose stamina when you take damage. For most, if not all builds, if you take stamina damage, you will be stun locked, especially by a lot of the faster enemies. You cannot move and you will die. This is not playable in Crucible, and I don't think it ever will be playable. And so there's disproportionate values on the negative affixes, forcing you specifically into getting some of the more less punishing affixes, making the bloat even worse. So you're going to have affix bloat. It's going to be way more affixes, and then the negative affixes are going to be harder to maneuver. So let's say you got 4 pieces at the perfect roll, and then you got something that makes it so you lose XP on death and you're like level 12. Well, then you're probably never going to move, like you're not going to use that piece until like super end game when you get max level. Or let's say the stamina thing, you don't have a lot of stamina because your stats are balanced. It's not a usable piece. It's not going to work. I'm hoping that they do make some changes on this. Maybe the negative affixes aren't as so bad, but honestly, I think it's just a cook system, And I think it should just be a positive affix or just remove it altogether, in my opinion. Maybe if they added some form of corruption system to the game, similar to Path of Exile, where you put some type of currency on top of it and then you run the risk of making the thing worse, that would be nice. And then, like, say for example, you get the negative affix, but it increases the value of your positive affixes. I could see that being something like worth it. But I really hate the system currently because it just makes it so that you're forced to pick a certain affix, a negative affix. And I think it's always bad when you have a negative on something that's supposed to be a positive looting experience, which is getting loot for your character. I don't want to dwell on this too much because I can talk about this all day, but yeah, Affix Bloat is going to be a problem, and I hope that it doesn't become one. Now, the next issue is armor values, and this was an issue with No Rest for the Wicked a year ago, where armor is a very specific way. So the lighter the armor, the less armor value, the less poise. The problem with this system is there's no reason to use heavy, light, or medium armor. Like there's no discernible difference outside of the weight. This means inherently that you want heavy armor, and if you look at all my characters now, 2 of them are mages, 2 of them are warriors, 1 is a rogue, and every single one of them uses heavy armor. The reason for this is because it has the best armor value, it has the best poise value. Me using light armor brings me no value, me using medium armor brings me no value outside of weight, and seeing that I can just use one affix that reduces the weight of things, that's going to be way more valuable than taking double your damage because you have less armor. I hope that makes sense. Armor is just too strong right now, and this has always been an issue. I think I was watching Larry Puss video, I'll have him linked down in the description. The guy seems to always be pretty versed in No Rest for the Wicked. But basically, he was suggesting that each of the armor pieces should have some type of value. I think I actually said this last year as well, that there should be some type of value that the lighter armor or the medium armor brings to the table. One of the things I suggested was there's already like different styles of armor. So there's like cleric armor already in the game. And once again, the difference between cleric armor and some of the heavier armors are just the armor value. But you can just make that cleric armor have like focus or something. This is like the equivalent of mana. And then like armor, but it'll be less armor than the heavier armor pieces, but you'll have some type of focus on it. And this could be the same thing for light armor, where you have way more focus and something like, let's say, an implicit that has a focus generation or something like that. This would make it so that you could, in theory, use a base that has certain implicit values that makes it so that it's more prone to one of your builds. So if you're a caster, there's a good chance you'll use the lighter armor. You'll not be forced to use it. But, you know, you will weigh the pros and the cons, and it'll make it more valuable. Same with medium armor. You can have, like, evasion stat or, I don't know, crit or something. I don't know. I'm sure they could figure this out. But there needs to be a reason that I use light armor over heavy armor. Right now, there's just simply no reason to do that. And there's plenty of ways and ideas. I've suggested it many times, and just like I suggested here in this video. But right now, heavy armor is way more valuable than light armor. And again, looking at what I've seen in the preview, it looks like it's going to be kind of the same thing, and I really don't think that's healthy for the game. Finally, my last concern comes with the hunger system or the food system. Recently, No Rest for the Wicked made a change that made it so that there's a limited amount of food that you can eat at any given time. This means that if you are a player who wants to necessarily power through a fight by just having tons of food resources, you essentially can't do that anymore. You would have to play the fight. Now, me inherently actually like that. I know a lot of people don't like that. I don't think Larry liked that. I think he said that in his video. I actually like that you can't just straight up like power through it by just healing. I think that's actually just lazy combat. I'm actually really happy with that change. The problem with that change though is because there's a limited amount of food that you can eat, this kind of punished the player a little bit. Because previously you could go around and collect a lot of different food, and then you can be prepared for the fight, and then of course you have no cooldown, but at the same time you burn through your food if you play bad. Right now you're even more punished. You will lose all your food, and you'll have a limitation on the amount that you can do. You end up, I feel like you end up being a little bit more punished because you actually end up losing all the food and you can't secure the win on the fight. I think Larry specifically said that he didn't like it because it discourages exploration. I don't necessarily agree with that specifically. I think it's healthy that players who are going like above and beyond on their levels actually have to play well. Like I don't think you should be able to power through healing. I think that's just bad design. But I also don't think that you should limit hunger in the open world. I think the way this would be better is if it's specifically in the Crucible, you have the hunger system, but out in the open world, it's fine. I think that would be a much better way to do it, because I think the current change will actually punish players a little bit too much compared to it helping players feel more skillful. That's just my opinion of it. And the other thing is it makes defense more valuable, which compounds the armor issue, because if I take less damage, then I'm going to use less heals, and then the hunger system is less punishing to me, and this incentivizes me to specifically get heavier armor to mitigate damage. And seeing that there's no reason to use light or medium armor, heavy armor becomes more valuable, and it just creates an issue. Again, a lot of these problems come back to the armor system that I talked about a year ago that hasn't been addressed. Again, I haven't seen the patch notes, I haven't seen the changes, but it seems like it hasn't been addressed yet, and again, this will continue to be a problem until it is. I'm actually pretty fine with healing becoming more valuable because that's the upside, and obviously the reason they're doing this is because you're doubling up the size of the map, meaning whenever you do a full rotation of where all the herbs and things of the sort, you can super get ready for a crucible. Previously, a year ago, I could go through the entire map, have enough healing resources to be able to do the crucible fairly easy, and then now doubling the map means there's going to be more nodes available, and you'll be able to get more resources and then kind of devalue the crucible, I guess, to some degree. But again, I just don't think that's the best way to go about it. I think there's ways to do it, and I think that just making it so you have the limited heals in crucible will actually do it. That's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think about that specifically, but I still think that the armor value stuff really needs to be addressed, and the Affix Bloat and or lack of crafting system definitely needs to have some changes coming up soon. I think that's way more imperative than co-op and console playing, things like that, because it just makes the game unnecessarily grindy, and that comes from someone who can literally play all day. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this one, guys. Hate to have a negative, I guess, like video before the launch of the new update. I know a lot of you are hyped, but I do think these are concerns that at least needs to be pointed out or addressed, and then once it actually comes out and I'll play for like another day or two, I'll have an updated video talking about this stuff. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Leave me a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video very soon.